Welcome back, and we are continuing on with a series that we have developed, asking some pastors to come in and share with us how they're encouraging their congregations to stay strong during these crazy, difficult days and challenging days in which we live, when faith is being challenged on a daily basis, and right seems to be wrong and wrong seems to be right. And added to that mix, Pastor Jim Wright pastors an inner city church, which in itself can be quite challenging. So I'm delighted to have with us Pastor Jim Wright. He's pastor of Mountain Christian Fellowship in downtown Medford, to help us get an understanding of maybe how you're doing this. Jim, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Before we get into that, inner city church, is it a different challenge than maybe being somewhere else, a suburban church?
It is, and it's great. You know, it was about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago that the Lord just really impressed on my wife and I, you know, we need to get in the city somewhere. That's kind of, you know, our background is kind of coming out of that whole culture, that whole drug, you know, culture. And so it was about 8 years ago we started the church in Medford, and then we ended up, you know, right downtown, just planted on 1 East Main Street. I mean, it couldn't be more right in the middle of town. And what a great bunch, you know, and a lot of folks, you know, they just walk to church. You know, they've lost their license from a variety of issues or whatever, and you know, it's just so neat to be right downtown, just serving those that are hurting and you know, those gone through, you know, hardship. And,
well, I want to say thank you for answering that call, because it's hard to get people to look at inner city ministries these days. You know, you go to some of these big cities and all the churches are out in the suburban areas, and there's not a whole lot going on downtown, and if it is, it's left to the gospel mission or something like that.
Which we were partnered with, you know, heavily. Matter of fact, we staff the Medford Gospel Mission every evening, so that anybody in our community that's hungry or cold or wet has a place to sleep. And so we're able to provide the staff for that, just with volunteers from the church, and just linking with the you know, Gospel Mission. We've been doing that for a couple of years now. We call it the Warm Dry Project, where we just go down and love on the guys, and you know, have a cup of coffee with them and stay up most of the night. You know, they come trickling in all through the evening and have a place for them to stay.
That's wonderful. Well, you know, I guess you would admit, you've seen it, we're living in some pretty challenging, crazy times. Did you ever think we'd be dealing with these issues?
Man.
I mean, didn't you think you'd just grow up, preach the gospel, and everything would be kind of, you know, rose and fuzzy, and we just move on? But yeah, I mean, now everything's crazy.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, what's going on in our world, Perry, is just, it's unbelievable, you know, and people need the Lord, you know. At the end of the day, that's what we need, you know, and we can talk about politics, and those are important things, and economy, and but at the end of the day, the root of the issue is sin. And the root of the issue, the solution is Jesus. And so, yeah, it's a crazy world, you know.
Has this influenced your teaching, your preaching? How do you communicate that in the midst of all of this, where all of a sudden even Christianity is being challenged in the marketplace?
Oh, man.
I mean, at the water cooler, I mean, Christians are being hammered. How do you go about getting your congregation encouraged?
Well, you know, obviously the Word of God, you know, as we're going through the book of Acts right now, and we see persecution in the church, you know, and God has a design for that. You know, there's a purpose for persecution. We see it right there at the beginning of the church age, where the Christians got heavily persecuted, but there was a plan in that. God used that in a significant way to change the world, because by that persecution, a lot of the Christians left Jerusalem. And then, of course, the word went out, you know, throughout the world ultimately. And so, you know, I just really been encouraging us as we go through stuff, you know, whether it's trial in our own life personally, or whether we're actually encountering, you know, some type of a physical affliction, or we're encountering some kind of persecution in our life. To not be surprised by it, because the Word talks about, you know, Peter says, hey, friends, listen, don't be surprised when you encounter various trials, you know, fiery trials, because these things are, it's not strange that these things would happen to you, you know. So in other words, be prepared for that. Have a mindset that, you know, I'm going to encounter that kind of stuff. And I wish, in my selfish nature, I wish that I didn't have to encounter that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm going to. And Peter says, don't be surprised by that. So have it in our minds as believers, we're going to encounter that, and to fight, to fight the good fight. And I love what you were sharing the other day at the Right to Life rally, about just the importance for us as a state, which was shocking news to me. I had no idea when you got that graph out and you showed us that we had 0 restrictions on abortion in our state. It motivated me to say, hey, I need to, as a pastor, continue to fight the good fight, not to be surprised when we encounter these kind of things, but to do the right thing, So,
Jim, we here at theDove, we're doing a lot with radio and television and internet, and we're looking for content and developing content that relates, because we can be very theological and go right over the top of everybody's head. And how do you bring it to a point where it can connect? And in that, we've done a lot of research. And one of the things that's stuck in my head is really just, I still can't get it out, is that 85% of the average parishioner sitting in a pew today is discouraged, even hopeless, and really struggling just to stay alive as a Christian. 85%. That is it's an indictment. It's a hard figure. And I can verify that by the calls that we get here, because most of the calls we get at theDove are from Christians who are actively involved in their church, but they're just barely holding on.
Right.
What does that mean to you?
What that means to me is the Western church, and I speak, in very general terms, the Western church, Perry, has veered away from, I believe, one of the absolute foundations of the church. Christ is the foundation, Paul says. There's only one. But one of the pillars, along with what we know in Acts 2:42, of the word and fellowship, breaking bread, prayer, including communion in that, is the importance for us to connect in our house-to-house, relationships. Because you see that all over the beginning of the church, all through the New Testament. Where were they meeting? They would meet in the courtyards of the temple. And there was a time where Jesus said, hey, we need to be that light set upon a hill where we all bring our individual torches, we come together, we celebrate. That's our weekend service. And we should come and worship, and we should come, and that's an encouraging time, But you got 6 more days, before you roll into that environment again. Or if you come to a midweek, oftentimes it's a Bible study, and that's great. That's foundational. We should be studying the Word. But where do we build our relationships with one another?
Right.
Because Paul says it. We have to connect as a body, and if one part of the body is hurt, man, the whole of the body hurts. The whole of the body should come around. Well, I've just seen in recent years in particular that more and more people, I would say 85%, come, take in a service, worship, spend time in the Word with a large congregation. Maybe you have multiple services, and they leave, and you can come to church for years and never, ever even know anybody.
Yeah.
Never really connect. And Perry, I think that's where, if we don't have relationship with each other, how can I love you if I don't know you? How can I proactively take care of you and tend to you and encourage you if I don't really know you? And I think that's where a huge part of that statistic is coming from.
Because when you begin to unpack that, you find out that people do come, and one of their motives for coming is a couple of things we found out in that research. They're hoping this time maybe something will be different. Okay, maybe something will be said, maybe something will break, maybe this time it'll do.
Right.
And the other reason they come out is they actually come out, I know there's a God, I believe in him, I guess I should be there.
Right.
No.
Obligation more, perhaps.
And I'm thinking, all right, that's pretty difficult. But it does reflect the fact that this culture has come down on us, and it's heavy. Most of these people are packing a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, and they're hoping maybe coming to church, maybe this time something will happen.
Right. Yeah. It's true. And they're kind of waiting for that epiphany. And oftentimes that something does happen in that environment.
Right.
Where the Lord just ministers by His Word something really powerful that they needed to hear. albeit what I hear more often than not is that's the word I needed to hear today from everybody, you know, and that's just how the word is, you know. But what we're doing right now, where we're shifting as a church culture, specifically Mountain Church right downtown, is we're moving into you know, really connecting in our life groups throughout the week. Matter of fact, so much so that starting in March, we're actually going to suspend what we know of as our normal Wednesday night Bible study. And I know at first glance that sounds heretical. Like, how could you even think of that? You know? Well, hear me out. And that is, we're going to be using the technology that we have available to us and just doing our midweek Bible study via video. We're going to be honing it down to a smaller, shorter format. And then we're going to be connecting throughout the whole community, whether we're in Central Point or Jacksonville or Phoenix or, you know, Eagle Point or wherever we are as a church. And we're going to be gathering in our homes. And the purpose of that is, well, we're going to be taking in the Word via our website and a video that'll be on for the week of, whatever that is. Taking in the Word, continuing going through the Word, but then being able to dialogue about it, pray with one another, encourage one another, lift each other up when we are down, you know, and laugh and cry, have a meal together, have communion together around the table, literally, you know. And then, as importantly, we're also going to be on mission to our community. In other words, you and I say we live in the same neighborhood. We're connecting every week. We're beginning to get to know each other. You're going through stuff. I can pray for you because actually we know each other, you know, and vice versa. Right. And then we as a church within the church, we can begin to pray, Lord, what do you have for us, and how can we show the gospel, live out the gospel in our neighborhood? Because it's our neighborhood.
So you are
they're geographically based.
You are making a radical change in your church to respond to this cultural
Absolutely.
need.
Yeah. It's so much so that, and not without some pushback. You know, when you make a change to that degree, it's high risk. But not when, I mean, if God is for you, who can be against you, right? So when we agree as a group of elders and you know, we believe this is the vision that God's given us, then I believe there's no risk, because if God's in it, hey, you know, we'll succeed at it. So and I believe that not only are we going to be encouraged as believers, but Perry, you know this to be true, when you go out and you start looking for the opportunity to share the gospel with others in your neighborhood, and you start looking out and fulfilling the commission that God has given us, it changes everything within, because we're no longer consumed with us and our problems and our issues and our persecutions and all of that, you know.
So let me take a quick break here. We'll be back. Jim Wright's with us from Mountain Christian Fellowship, and we'll carry on with this interesting thought coming up in just a moment. Okay, we're back, and our guest is Pastor Jim Wright. He's pastor of Mountain Christian Fellowship in downtown Medford, and he's kind of our second guest, pastor guest, to come in and talk about how is he encouraging his congregation during these crazy times. What's he doing to minister to the flock that God's given him to watch over? And you had some pretty revolutionary things about ready to be launched, you say, in March, huh?
Yeah, March is when we're going to be actually starting our new initiative to really reach our community and launch our life group ministry.
Another interesting statistic is that 93%, and these are statistics that I've gathered through the years, and some from Barna and some from other things. So I don't say they're hardcore, but I think they are reflective of some ideas. 93% of parishioners don't see their pastor as somebody they can go to. They see him as a teacher, a leader, but when life falls apart for them, they don't think that that guy's accessible. How do you respond to that?
Well, I do know that statistic, and I fought against that statistic personally by not having a backstage personally. I mean, we didn't create a backstage in our church facility because I think it's really important for not only me as a lead pastor, but all of our pastors to not be in hiding. You know, and it can often it can be that way where the pastor is inaccessible. We need to be incredibly accessible, but it takes a long time, and that's part of the problem. Is a lot of times anybody can meet with me as a pastor, but it might take a while. You know, in other words, this calendar.
No, I understand, and you can't do it all,
of course. You know,
but you know the story of Moses and his father-in-law and all that.
Right.
You know that whole thing.
Yeah.
But the deal of it is that you had mentioned to me during the break that you realize, wait a minute, I don't know these people's names.
Right, exactly.
Tell us that.
Well, you know, again, we've been meeting for 8 years as of like a week ago. It was our 8-year anniversary or whatever, and I asked the body not too long ago, you know, how many of you guys been here since, you know, the first inception of Mountain, our first Sunday service or whatever. You know, it was a small percentage. A lot of folks that that call Mountain their home have actually been baptized there, and they gave their life to Christ there. So that's kind of been their home throughout the years. But I go way back to that 8-year time frame, and there was 20% or whatever. And as I looked at that crowd, I realized, you know, I maybe know a few of you by first name on a first name basis. And I was saying that in context of we can come to a large church that has several services and never get to know each other. But how are we to show the world that we are Christians by our love for one another if we don't know each other? And the context of showing the world love by loving one another, it has to happen, you know, outside the walls of the church building. Yeah. And so I guess, Perry, you know, to answer your question is, you know, the small group is where it's at in our communities and being on mission in our community, you know, to be able to reach the lost and really to love each other and understand that we all have a gift to use within the body. And not everybody can latch on to you. You know, you're busy and you know, but they can connect with one another and love each other.
The very nature of church puts a lot of pressure on you to be all things to all people.
Right. That's the nature of it.
And I don't know how you balance that. You probably got some people say, don't take on the social issues. You got others say, yeah, take it on.
Right.
And I know that you're very biblically based, and I really respect that. How do you handle it? I mean, you responded to that statistic I gave at the Rally for Life.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that stuff?
Well, that's where I start put into motion just some really godly men and women that I have the privilege of being surrounded by. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I found out about that meeting last night at First Baptist, I called one of our elders. I said, hey, can you go and represent and get out, you know, get all the information that you can concerning, you know, our role as a church to help, you know, get moving forward this bill to begin to put up some roadblocks that we presently don't have concerning abortion in our state. Right. And so, yeah, you're right. You can't do everything, but you certainly should do what's important. Yeah. You know, and you kind of have to, you know, value what is important according to the Word, and life is important for sure.
Have you seen miracles in your church?
Absolutely.
I mean, I know the miracle of salvation and regeneration is the miracle.
There is no greater miracle. Yeah, for
that's
sure.
The miracle.
Absolutely.
But are you praying for miracles?
Absolutely. We are praying. We have been praying for. Interesting that you'd say that. We have been praying for the miracle of all of Medford to be saved. Now that sounds like kind of pie in the sky when you first hear it. We've been praying that regularly for 8 years now. Lord, I know it's your will that none perish, but that everybody comes to repentance. I know that. That's what your word says. So I'm banking on that truth. And so we've been praying that for years, and the Lord just stopped me in my tracks about maybe 3 months ago as we were training leaders for the life groups. And the Lord, you know, just spoke to my heart and just said, Jim, you know, it's my will that none perish. Is it yours? Are you willing to get out there and share the gospel? Are you willing to do things that are perhaps a little unorthodox to see the gospel shared in your community and see, you know, miracles happen in salvation? So I believe that is happening. I believe there's revival taking place in our community, even in light of all of the, you know, high divorce rate and the drug culture that we live in and the gangs and all of that. The Lord is doing the miracle of saving and by the power of the gospel.
What I'm hearing you also say, that didn't say that God's going to bring them to your church,
right.
But your church was to go.
Yes.
Here you are over at the Gospel Mission.
Right.
You're doing home groups.
At the women's shelter.
Yeah.
ARC, involved, as much as we can be in all of the programs in our city that are helping with rehab and such. So yeah, it's going out and being a part of the community and loving our community and supporting the work that God's doing in our community for the cause of the gospel. But as far as hands-on physical miracles and the miraculous, man, we're seeing people healed constantly. We're praying for folks, laying hands on them, anointing them with oil, and seeing people. Just recently, I'm thinking of several that had cancer and now they do not. Their cancer is gone. There's others where they are they still have cancer and they're still sick. But God, that's a sovereign work of God.
Relationships being healed and things.
Marriages are being healed. God is a great healer. He's the great physician.
Yeah.
And He's doing great work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you sense a sense of urgency to do more quickly?
I do, and I have to be very careful so that we don't become a works-based church.
I was going to say that could be self-imposed.
I have to be careful because we are saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. Yeah. End of story. I believe that wholeheartedly. Yeah. But once we're saved, we should be about good works. And so I have to be careful not to overemphasize works, so
you can work yourself to death and you can work your staff to death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are. I believe we are living in the end times, and it's our responsibility as Christians to live out the gospel. And we need to take responsibility for our community, and not just go, well, God's sovereign, He'll save whom He wants to save. Yeah, He will, but He's chosen us as the church, as His divine means to share the gospel. So yeah, there is an urgency.
Your church members that go down and work at the Gospel Mission, that is literally serving the least of these. Has it been life-changing for them?
Every one of those guys that volunteer to take one night a week, and it's an all-night deal. They go down there and it's all night. They go down at, I think, 10 p.m. and they stay till 6 a.m. And then they go to work the next day. And so I asked them a couple of years ago, my wife actually really stirred us up to get moving on this project, and she's a real motivator. And so we encouraged those to say, hey, would you pray about taking one night a week of your life and going down there? And yeah, it's going to be hard. You're going to be tired the next day, and you're going to be wore out and yada yada. But go down and be there so that there are people that don't have to sleep on the streets and in the cold. And this is right after that guy died last year. If you remember last winter, he died on the tracks down there. And it was such a tragedy. Actually, it was about a week before that happened that we put the word out. And then, so the guys, that just manned up and said, yeah, we're in. And a whole bunch of them, just said, hey, we're in, to where we were staffing it every night of the week. And we did that through all last winter and through this winter now too. And there hasn't been one guy that's come back and go, man, I regret that. I wish I wasn't doing that. The testimonies of those guys, man, they were like, I thought I was going to go down there to help out some poor guys that were sleeping on the street. Not so.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's a beneficiary of that, and I'm the one that's been blessed by that. And you know how that is.
Jim, that's a good report. Your church located at?
1 East Main. Yeah.
Down.
Right in the heart of construction zone down there.
Yeah. And your service times?
9 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. And presently on Wednesdays, but we're moving into the life groups here in March. So.
And your website?
mtnchurch.tv.
Okay.
So Mountain Church. .tv. We're Mountain Church.
Okay.
I know you referred to us as Mountain Christian Fellowship a couple times. But
Mountain Church. Mountain Church.
We used to be Mountain Christian Fellowship.
Okay, well, you're Mountain Church.
We decided to change our name to Mountain Church, simplified things.
That's good. All right, the website again is?
mtnchurch.tv.
All right, thanks for coming in.
All right, thank you, Barry. God bless you guys here.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.